Okay, so to actually use this thing, I'm going to actually put another gradient on here really quickly. So let's look at that instead. It'll make more sense for the rest of this. So this is what I'm going to print out. So to do this, come up to the File menu, down to Print. A dialog box will open up, and the way you handle this part and the order that you do this part in is pretty critical. And unfortunately, again, the UI development that Adobe has done on this is not, in my opinion, it should be done in order. It's not done in order, so you just need to know that this is going to happen. So the first thing, starting at the very top, that is correct is that we need to actually set the printer that we used to actually do this print. And so the printer we used was the Epson 4900, because again, that's what I'm going to print this thing on. Then before you go into the printer settings right here, you have got to change the color handling part right here. So where it says printer manages color, we are going to change that to Photoshop manages color. This will actually change things up inside the printer dialog box that we need to actually change. So again, unfortunately, in my opinion, they should have printer settings that follow all of this, because the changes that we've made in here are impacting things that exist up in here. And if you go in and you set all the things up here correctly, and then you come down and make these the correct way they should be, it can actually change things that you had already set up previously to that, and it doesn't tell you that it's going to do that. So at any rate, in the printer profile drop-down menu, you need to find the thing that we just built. So the thing that we just built was it was named a 4900. It's a 4900, and it was this CAN photo set RC UPPM underscore VE. This is what I just measured out and what I just made. So you would pick this. Again, it would only work for that printer that I used, the 4900, not any other 4900, but that one, only using this Canson paper, only using this set of settings that are in here. That was the only thing that this will work for. So again, if you use multiple stocks of paper, you've got to have multiple profiles. If you use one stock of paper, but you do it on multiple printers, you've got to have multiple profiles. So everybody gets this part, right? Then you go back up to the printer settings now. In the printer settings, you will have a drop down here under layout. You should check color matching. This should have been turned off or set correctly, but you need to check it anyway. You check color matching, and it should be grayed out. You shouldn't be able to change this because you've just said that Photoshop is going to manage color. This is one of those things that if you change it here, it will change things back in here, so it will not be in order. So again, don't do this out of order. Do it the way I'm suggesting that you actually do this part. In color matching, if you drop down, you don't need to deal with paper handling or cover, but printer settings is critical. In printer settings, when this part comes up, this is the media type that I was actually talking about. So you'll see here that this is a premium luster photo paper. In this drop-down menu under matte, I said we use the ultra premium presentation matte. Whatever this setting is that you use to make the profile, you need to use it when you use the profile. So for instance, if you made your profile using ultra premium presentation matte paper, but then you actually were printing using premium luster photo paper, this profile is no good. So you remember I said there was a note on the bottom of mine that said that it was ultra premium presentation matte. We actually built that into the name of the profile. That's what UPPM stands for, was ultra premium presentation matte. Again, the one thing that screws most people up in this whole game is that they forget about the media setting. And the reason this media setting is important is that it tells the printer how much ink to lay down. So I don't know how, but most of you probably know this, is that what's got greater detail, a glossy paper or a matte paper? Why? Well, no, think about it. A matte paper is like a sponge, right? If you were printing on a hard tile surface, it would hold the ink. Wouldn't you get better detail on that than a sponge? A sponge, the ink bleeds. It tends to spread. They call that dot gain, and the official word for that in the industry is called dot gain, and it has all to do with the quality of the paper. So glossy papers have a very hard polished surface on them, so they can hold very precise laydown of ink. The ink does not tend to spread into neighboring areas where matte, it spreads a lot. But the other thing about matte paper is because of that ink spreading, it sucks up ink like a sponge. It takes a whole lot more ink. So if you use a glossy setting for a matte paper, it lays down very little ink. Your image looks very light. If you do the reverse of it and you actually use a matte setting on a glossy piece of paper, you will get this fucking wet thing that comes out of your printer with ink floating all over it because you've laid down way more ink than the paper can absorb. So that's what these media settings are all about. They control the amount of ink that's laid down, not necessarily the color, but the amount. And so that has an impact. So again, if you don't match the profile setting to the paper setting, it's an invalid profile. Does that part all make sense? Okay, so then this part is actually set correct. In terms of the output resolution here, this has more to, well, we haven't gotten into this part, and I don't know that we're going to get into this really tonight as much. However, what this really is a conversation about is how many dots per inch. This is not resolution. This is dots per inch. This has to do with a thing called dithering. If we get to it at a certain point, we will get to it. But what this really does is the higher this number is, the more subtle color you can achieve. Does that make sense? Because the truth of the matter is, in our life, well, we're just going to talk about it now because we're here and we might as well talk about it. So I'm going to show this to you really quickly. Let me jump out of this guy, though. So again, that's where the printer settings are, part whatever we're going to talk about resolution is. Typically for me, I leave this at this 1440. Some people will actually do it at 2880. If you go to the 2880, it will give you more nuanced color, but we are talking about incredibly subtle color differences that are available to you. I'll show you why that is in just a second. For me, I have a very hard time seeing the difference in these two. However, if you do use the 2880 DPI, it will double your print time. It used to be in the old days that people would not use high-speed printing because it was a registration issue. Your print heads, if you turn off high-speed printing, your print heads only print in one direction. So the printer comes across printing left to right, then it travels back right to left, and it does not lay down any ink at all, and then it does the next row. So it takes twice as long. In high-speed printing, it prints in both directions. Printers have gotten so good now, you don't need to worry about high-speed printing. So at any rate, I would hit save on this, and then I would be ready to actually print. We will also talk about rendering intents a little bit later on. But does this make sense, everybody, where we're going? Okay, so I'm going to talk about the color issue really quickly, and then I need everybody to look at something for me if they would. I'm going to turn off the light really quick just so that you can see this a little bit better, and then I've got to turn it back on so that I can get you guys to tell me, to look at print, tell me what you think. Okay, this is dithering. In the image that you're looking right here, every single image in this has actually got 50% blue and 50% red. These are pure inks, or pure colors, because they're not inks. They're pure colors that are being shown on the screen. But each one of them is half red and half blue. Does that sort of make sense? But you see, as the dots start to get smaller and smaller and smaller, they actually start to become the color of the two of them mixed together. They start to, when you get down here, they start to actually take on this lavender color. And if we continue to get smaller and smaller and smaller, you would no longer even see the dots at all. You wouldn't see these little squares. You would just see what you think is a pure lavender color. And the reason that's important to us is that you've got to ask yourself, okay, the printers out there, for the most of them, they have anywhere from 7 to 11 inks. Most of them have a CMYK, or a CMY. Then K would be the black ink. Most of them have 3 black inks. They have a regular black ink, solid black ink, and then they have a light black ink, and then they have a light black ink. That's, again, to expand range, because if you want to have extremely light toned black and white, it's very hard to do that with a pure black ink. It's much easier to do that with a really light gray ink. So that's why they do it. They do it to extend that printing range. They do the same thing in color. They usually will add either a light cyan and a light magenta, or you'll get a light cyan and a vivid magenta. Or some of them will actually, depending on the printer, will actually add a green ink and an orange ink. So all that they're trying to do is extend the range of printable color. But at its essence, in its core, at its most basic, a typical printing press that you were to go on to print an art book or to print a magazine or anything like that strictly has 4 inks on it. It's got cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. That's all it's got. However, those 3 inks, or those 4 inks as it were, they need to make millions of colors. And they do it by doing this dithering process. They can't change the color of ink. The ink will always be cyan. It will always be magenta. It will always be yellow. What they do is they make really, 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 really tiny dots of it. And the smaller those dots get, the more nuanced that color can be. You can see here, if I've only got 4 dots, it's not very nuanced. But when I get here down to this, to thousands of dots, it can get to be very nuanced. And if I continue this process and make them even smaller and smaller and smaller, the number of colors that I can print increases. Now, the difference in those is very, very, very subtle, but nonetheless, it exists. Does that make sense to you guys? That's what that setting is in the printer dialog box. When you could change that from 1440 to 2880, the subtleties that you could achieve because what you're doing is you're making the little dots smaller. By making them smaller, you can actually vary the amount of them more in a subtle way to achieve a more subtle color. Is everybody clear on that part? Okay, so then I need everybody to come over here to Catherine's desk. Be quick. You need to look at this print for me. This is the last part. It's the part nobody ever tells you. So, we have built our profile, and that profile takes care of our differences in color. However, what we have not done is dealt with tone. So I need everybody to look at this. I'm going to explain what this piece of paper is, and then I want you guys to pass this around and look at it. So this is a synthetic chart that I made. All of this is available, by the way. All the software we're going to deal with tonight is on our Canvas site. A version of this is on our Canvas site. So it's the next step in what you guys need to do for your perfect color, perfect transition from your screen to your whatever you need to actually do this as well. So what this is a chart that's made of is there's squares in here, there's little squares in here that are made of pure tones of gray. So the first one right here is, you can see the 0 up here, it's a 0, 0, 0, which is as pure, it's as black as you can get. The next one is a 3, 3, 3, then a 6, 6, 6, a 9, 9, 9, a 12, 12, 12. And as we go up the scale here, we're just getting to be a lighter and lighter gray. Does that make sense to everybody? And then on this row down here, we're at 24s and 24s, 27s and 27s, 27, 27, 27. By the time we get up here, we're at 45, 45, 45. So it's basically, it's just a step wedge, right? But I haven't done every single one of them because this would be way too long, but you guys get where this is going, right? On this one down here, it's the same thing, but the thing down here is actually done in lighter grays. So down here, the ones that are actually important to us are this. This is a 234, 234 here, a 237, 237, and again, all the way up here, and this is a 255, 255, 255. Does that make sense to everybody, what's going on here? On the black patches, I've actually taken a letter V, the character V. The V is solid black in all of these. On the flip side, for the lighter patches right here, the V is a pure white on all of these. And what we need to do with this chart is we need to determine where we have shadow detail and where we have highlight detail. Does that make sense what's going on? Because this is the thing that everybody screws up. Everybody has said, I mean, when you guys go to set a black point or a white point in Photoshop, where do you set it? And what do you set? Is the darkest thing in your image in Photoshop supposed to be black? Not necessarily. What you care about is detail in the shadows, right? That's what you want to set. Your black point will be your black point. If there are things that are already black that have no detail in them, they will be that way. But if there's something that you can say to yourself, I want this to be my shadow detail, you need to know where to set that. And I can promise you it's not in the 3s and the 5s. That is not where it is. You might be able to see that on the screen, but you will never see that in print. Does that make sense? So we've got to find out where that is. The same thing holds true for the highlight details. We've got to find out where that really is, because it is not 255. 255 is page white. It is this edge right here. It's got no ink on it at all. So that's what you print this thing out to try to determine. This changes depending on the paper and the printer and the inks that you are using. So for instance, if you were doing this on a matte surface, you will actually find that the black shadow detail ends up in a much higher range than it does in glossy. Again, glossy has more detail in it. It's capable of going into much deeper blacks and holding detail than is a matte piece of paper, because a matte piece of paper is a sponge, right? So what I need everybody to do is look at this, and what I'm going to ask you to do is look at the area where you feel like, and you can pick it up and hold it here, where you feel like it's not where you can barely see the V, because if you really hold this up and squint and get in a really bright light, you might possibly notice there's a difference somewhere in here. That is not shadow detail. Shadow detail is where you can look at this thing and say, okay, I can fully see that thing. There's no question about it. And what I want you to do is give me a value for where you see in the shadows, and also do the same thing for the highlights. So we'll start with Catherine and anybody who wants to hang over her shoulder. And tell me where you feel like you see the black V. Truly see it.
I think usually around 24 is where.
What do you guys think?
I agree with that.
About that? How about the white?
In the white, I'd say 252.
Okay, 252. In the white, there's also a more of a finer scale right down here that goes from 249 up to 254. So are you still feeling that 252 is the best? You guys agree? Yep. Okay, all right. You guys, do it in groups. So the 3 of you guys, where do you truly see the black? The black V separate from the background. Where? 12. Where do you truly see it separated? No question about it. Full blown, I can see this. 42? Oh my God. Okay. Okay. Henry? $45? All right, you guys.
Huh? I'm losing energy. Yeah, me too. I'm eating. I had a granola bar.
So we're really seeing the black V separated. Well, clearly you see it here, but Jesus, I could go up to here and say the same thing, whatever. You don't see that V? You guys don't see that V? I don't see this V.
Yeah, we were reading.
Okay, so these are, yeah, Jimmy's seeing it up here, whatever. But I'm like, for me anyway, I'm usually kind of in this area right in here. I can really pick it out. Up in here, that's hard. Jimmy has got, I don't know, extra vision or something. So Jimmy's like, okay, yeah, okay. But it's not just the faintest, oh yeah, maybe let's get a really fucking bright light on it. Oh, now I see it. That's not shadow detail. Shadow detail is obvious. Okay, you can see in the wrinkles of, you know, what you can see. It's there. It's not, I think it's there. Maybe. Whatever. All right. So you guys getting this? How about the white? So we have a 252, 249. All right. Jen, you've done this before, haven't you?
No.
Oh, here.
Where do?
So where do you see the black?
It's different when you're like in the classroom, not like working.
24. That's, for me, I see it at 25. That's usually where I go for. So the 24, 25, whatever. That's just me. Okay? Where do you see the white? $249. Okay, great. So you can give me the card back. I need everybody to go back. We're going to turn out the lights. We're actually going to start looking at some stuff and working with some stuff right now. I'm not going to leave you guys hanging. Don't worry. This matters. Okay, so I fixed the files that I want you to get your hands on. So can you go to the class server again for me really quickly? Did everybody who's working on laptops, were you able to get onto the server? Okay, so there's a couple of files that I want you to grab when you get there. We're going to look at those right now. So I want to go back to this illustration really quickly and just tell you this. So what we have done now is we've built one of these guys right here. Does that make sense to everybody? So I don't have the good shit in here yet, but I can get it. Once I get it in here, I can get it out. Are we good on that part? Okay, so that one has been built. Okay. So why does this ultimately matter in the end of all of this entire conversation? If you go into a studio that is not color managed and you offer to do it for them, you will change their lives forever, and they'll pay you a lot of money. Well, I guess a lot is a relative term. Okay, so yeah, so anyway, I need you to go to the server. Let me get there with you. Class projects. Go to Engelhard. And into assignments complete, into student files week number 2, and then at the top you will see there's a folder called this 2010. It basically ends in Woods 07. That's the folder I want you to get to, and inside that there's going to either be 2 or 4 files in there. The only one I really want you to get is the one that's frame number 1. It's the one sitting up here at the very top. If you double click on that guy, it will actually open up into Camera Raw for you, and this is where we should be. Has everybody got this part? Could everybody find this guy and get it into Camera Raw? Okay, so you remember, I told you guys, I promised you that I could give you perfect exposure and I could also give you perfect neutral color. So the thing that you're looking at in this image is a big version of a Macbeth color checker. This is the baby version. Most of you guys have seen this version right here. How many people in this room own this guy? That's okay, that's okay. Well, but you should know why you should own this guy, right? I mean, if you're going to go out and spend, this is $100. Don't buy it straight out of that. There is an educational discount. So at the very least, if you can't find that, find me, because you can get this for $20 off. I'm pretty sure that you can still do that. So I think you can get this for $79. So just, again, I'm not here to sell this shit, but if this changed my life, I don't work without this. This is almost as important to me as my camera. So not for $80, not bad. All right, makes a great stocking stuffer, right? Okay, the reason that this is important, again, this contains exactly the information on there, and the Colorchecker actually has more to it, but nothing that I can't really do with this card right here. So the first thing that I can do with this card is white balance my image. So you remember I said that by definition, white balancing is taking something in your image that should be neutral and making it neutral. So when we look at this image, you could say to yourself, well, are there other things in this image that what should be neutral in this image? Right? Well, probably the girl's shorts should be neutral. They may have a slight color cast to them, but they're probably pretty neutral. The white sky is probably not neutral. It's actually probably got some sort of tone or cast in it and probably should. This guy's shirt maybe is a possibility. Possibly the card that he's actually holding right here, that should probably be a neutral because I'm guessing that it's a white printed thing like that. But the advantage of this card is that at the bottom of this card is a strip of tones that all should definitely be neutral. So I need everybody to zoom in to this card right here. To get to the zoom tool, it's the first of the icons up at the top. Click and simply zoom into this guy. And as you zoomed into this guy, if you take a look under the histogram right over here, you will see that there's a series of RGB readouts. If you hover over any of these colors, it will give you the RGB value. Again, it's giving you the color of it, but it's really giving you the location. It's a mapping of the location. We looked at that earlier. So I'm hovering over the yellow patch, and it's giving me a 235, 217, 35. That's basically the color that it's reading on that right now. If I hover over this patch, the one that's on the bottom of the rows, you can see that this is a gray ramp as well. This goes from a whitish to middle grays to a darkish. I'm not ever going to say white, and I'm never going to say black because these things should not be white and black. They are not. They are real things. They should not be white. This should not be a page white. So, but I do know that they should be neutral in color. Most casting that you find in color happens up in the highlights in what we call the quarter tones and up. That would be this area right here and up. The problem in doing the whitest of the whites is when we go to actually do a color correction, some of the RGB channels, one of them can actually be too close to pure white to actually affect a color correction on this. So instead, you would avoid these top patches altogether. Most people avoid the second one. Most people, myself included, always use the patch that's right next to the red to do their color balancing. If you hover over that patch, you will get a readout, and you can see up at the top, I've got a readout of a 183 red, 194 green, and a 208 blue. And so I know that this has not been color balanced, because those numbers should be all the same if this is truly neutral, right? Neutral gray has equal values of RGB. So this thing isn't even close. I'm going to zoom back out just a little bit so you can see the effect of the image more overall. So, to neutralize that, you go to the third of the icons across the very top, and this is the white balance tool. I want you to go ahead and pick on the white balance tool, and then I want you to come down on your image, and again, the gray patch that's right next to the red, I want you to click on that and see the difference that it makes in your image. Now, you guys tell me, can you do color correction that quick or that good? No, you can't. Let's make things worse. Pervert your image. I want you to click on the green patch that's right under her chin. How would you color correct that baby? Now really, if that had come out of your camera and you're looking at it, wouldn't you just say, okay, I hate my life. I have now got to figure this out. Go right back to that same patch that's right underneath the red and click on that. That's how easy color correction is, and that is perfectly neutral color. Does that make sense to everybody? I want you to then hover over the white patch here. And what do you read in the white patch? The color values underneath the histogram. It's in the 240s, right? If you do this actually in a different program, if you do this in Capture One, which we're going to do it in, those values fall closer to a 246. It just has to do with the difference in the processing engine. So, where did I come up with 246? What patch did you guys pick that said should be my highlight detail? There was a lot of 249s in there, right? So I know I've told this class before. Haven't we had that 245 to 250 conversation? Right? What should that white patch be? That white patch should not be 255. It is a real thing. This is real. When you look at this patch right here, this has detail in it. It's not paper white. It's got detail in it. Where did I say, based on what I did, my highlight detail should be? This is not some abstract. It comes from this. Does that make sense? So if I can get this to be between 245 and 250, I have perfect exposure. I've now got perfect exposure. I've also got perfect color. Perfectly neutral color. This does not mean that this is the color you end up with in the end. You may like your files warmer. You may say, you know, I want this to be sunsetty. I like it much warmer. I get that. But at least this will give you the perfectly neutral place to begin. Does that make sense to everybody? So I've got perfect exposure, I've got perfect color. The only thing that I need to establish in this image, is bringing this into Photoshop. What I would do, again, if I was developing this in Capture One, it would be set as far as my highlight shadow, my highlight detail goes, because this would be exactly where I want it. This again reads like a 246 in Capture One, so that would be set where it is. In our case here in Photoshop, it's not, so I am going to use the next of the color eyedroppers that go across. I'm going to pick this. This is the color sampler tool. And if you use the color sampler tool, you can come over and you can click on the white patch right here, and it will give you a little readout right here of what those things are. You can see that it's still a relatively neutral color. They're not exactly the same, but the difference in what you've got right here, 241, 241, 239, that 239 is so incredibly close for all practical purposes. This is exactly the same. Does this make sense what's going on here? Are we good on this part? So in my case here, my color has been neutralized. That part's set. I do that first. The next thing I'm going to do is slightly raise my exposure so that these values right here hit that 245 mark. So I'm going to bump this up just slightly right here, and I'm almost there. And I'm actually there in the greens. I'll hit it up just a fraction more. So this tells me that I was a quarter of a stop off in my exposure. I don't have quarter stop settings in my camera, so I'm thinking I was pretty damn close. Does this make sense to everybody? The final thing that you need to do is look at this image, and again, do not be seduced by believing that this black patch should be black. It should not. It doesn't even have anything to do with shadow detail. It's the image that has to do with shadow detail. So in looking at this image, I'm going to ask you guys to zoom into her waist down here. Come into this area right down in here, and let's look at what's going on right in here. For me, when I look at this area that's right sort of between the top of the shorts and her arm, that actually strikes me, and I'm in the meaty part of this, that actually strikes me as a place that probably should have shadow detail. It's really hard to see on this projector, but can you guys see sort of where I am? You will also notice that there's an area, a small line that's underneath it. It's actually where her body's hitting the mirror. And where her body's hitting the mirror, there's a small little black line under that. Can you guys all see that? That's actually probably should not have shadow detail in it. That should probably be below threshold. When you think about that and looking at that part of the image, there's no way that that thing should actually have detail. It should be below what my detail is going to be. But this area that's up in the sort of the meaty, waisty band of it all, whatever, I believe personally that that should actually have shadow detail in it. And if you take a look at my readout here, I am in the low 20s. So again, I would find something in here and click on this guy to set down another sampler point. This again is a shadow move now for me. I'm going to click on the shadow parts and I'm going to pop that up like a +3 in my shadow. My image is now set. It is set to actually print and be on screen based on the shit that I measured, not some fucking wild guess that everybody goes. The people that drive me the most nuts are the people that say, oh, you should set your black point at 10 and your highlight point at 240 and your image will be perfect and you can print it out. And it's based on nothing in your image. This is perfect exposure, perfect color, and then you are establishing the tonal range based on the information that you measured and that you did. And if you go into a photo studio and you do this for them, they look at you and go, where the fuck did you learn that? And you'll say, well, there's this guy that I've made this deal with. And when I become a superstar, have I had this conversation with you guys? Yeah. I know I've had it with you a number of times because you've been in a number of classes, but the rest of you guys, have we had the bourbon deal yet? Well, yeah, you guys have. Well, so for those of you who don't know, when you become incredibly rich and famous and you're a superstar and you think back to the days of, oh my God, I really owe Versa a huge gratitude of thanks for all this, you come find out what home they finally stuck me in and you bring me a thing of salt and a thing of bourbon, not necessarily in that order. And you smuggle it in because they will have deprived me from those two things in my old age. And this will be your nice way of saying, yes, Versa, I became a star. I'm a hero. I've made more money than God. I have the greatest life in the world. Here's a picture of all my family and all this. And here's a little something for you to say thanks. That's all I'm asking. Doesn't have to be often. Just anyway. Okay, are there questions about this? Are we good on this? So again, if you click on the drop-down menu and go to Fit to Screen, this image has now been set. Now, you could look at this and say, again, okay, well, he's neutralized the sound, but actually I prefer the image to be warmer. So you can click on your color temperature slider, and you can actually drag it up to make it a little bit warmer. You could also say, you know, that skin tone, that's just a little too blown out and that's a little too much for me right in there. I feel like that's a little too strong. You can see it's roughly in the 250s. For me, I feel like that still falls within that range. That's still got detail in it. But you could say to yourself, well, yeah, that seems a little blown out to me, and pull those highlights back. But what I'm saying to you is this. This is actually based on the best exposure that you can possibly come up with, and it's all due to this little card right here. Are we good on this part? We're going to talk about using this little card in the studio in a big way next week, so hold on to that part. So, and then this is how I would go. This is how I would proceed. You can hit cancel out of this if you've actually done that part. We can get rid of this. You don't need to save that. So, going back to our image part right here. Let me just quit this really quickly. So what we've actually done now is this whole part right here is we've built the profile to actually get this part in here. We've talked about color correction, but that's once you're actually in this space right here. What we have not done is we have not taken care of the device dependence of a camera. So that's the next thing we're going to do. So if you go back to, again, the server and go again into that student files week number 2, there is a thing called DNG custom profile example files. There's also, and just so that you know this, there's 2 pieces of software in here as well. One of them is the DNG profile editor, and the other is the color passport checker. They are both, they're free software. It doesn't cost anything. That software should be on these computers now active. It wasn't before. It should be now. It's also, a copy of them is also on the resources for next week in our Canvas class. So there's all sorts of places for you to find this software. We're going to talk about using this software right now. So to use this software, this is the software that you use to create the profile for your camera. Make sense? Okay, there's 2 of them, and we're going to do both of them really quickly. However, in this folder as well, before you get to using either one of those software parts, in the folder that I said, the DNG custom profile example files, has everybody got that folder open? There's a single file in there. It's called this, again, it ends up in frame number 1. I need everybody to double-click on that to launch it. It's telling me that I can't do this because of the type of file it is. What that's meaning is that I have got to copy that off of the server. So if you've got this file on the server, drag it to your desktop. You'll be able to launch it from your desktop. I'm going to go back to...
Yeah, it says we don't have permission to open it.
Drag it to your desktop.
Yeah, no, it says we don't have permission to drag it.
I dragged mine straight from the server to Photoshop and it opened.
Let's try that. They've got this stuff so fucked up, it's just ridiculous.
Mine's still
If you go into the capture folder, it's like inside that folder, you can find the number 1. You can do it from there.
Okay. Did everybody hear that? Okay, so instead of dragging that file that has worked for the last 5 years, go into the folder itself, there's a sort of a subfolder with the same name, into the capture folder, and there should be frame number 1 right there. Does that work? Can you copy that guy?
No. Drag it into Photoshop.
Just drag it into Photoshop from there. I cannot fucking believe this. Okay. Let's try this. What happens if you drag the entire folder? The whole week number 2. Grab the entire student files week number 2, the entire folder to your desktop. Did that work? No.
I said it couldn't because you don't really should access that exact file.
Hang on.
I probably have it for me.
We're going to pass it around. I'm going to do something in between. So hang on just one sec. Okay, guys, so I got a jump drive here that has got that file on it. It's the one at the very top. Here. I'll plug it in for you. As soon as you get a copy, could you just pass this to the next person? Okay, and while that's happening,
What's the name? Oh, never mind.
it's the very top one. It's the 2010, whatever. It ends in, yeah, it's. This is the name of the file right here, 20110917 underscore COL underscore fashion 1 underscore, yeah. Okay, you get that. Okay. So while that's getting passed around, is everybody good on this part? Okay, we're going to deal with the third chain of all of our color managed workflow. So in the, again, if we look at our flow right here, what you guys are doing is copying the file to help build this guy right here. What we are going to do right now, though, is build the monitor profile, this part right here. So I need everybody to watch this. Don't get too consumed with copying those files, but make sure that you pass this stuff on. This is i1 color profile color calibrator. There's two versions of this piece of hardware. There's one that's just called an i1. It looks like this. There's another one called a Color Monkey. It looks exactly like this guy. Don't use the Color Monkey, in my opinion. It does a really inferior job to this. Not that price matters in everything, but this is about twice the price of a Color Monkey. The checkout cage up here, the desk that's up here, has Color Monkeys only. They have 5 of them. I'm not even sure you can take those home. But the media center downstairs on the 4th floor has these i1 profilers. You can check this out for a couple days. You can take them home. You can check it out and use it right there if you're just doing your laptop. They're infinitely superior, and they're what you should be using. There is also
What are they called again?
an i1 profiler. It's named after the exact same stuff in the software. There is a thumb drive that is attached to this thing that you'll get as well. The thumb drive has the software on it. Install the software from this. Again, it's free software. They don't really care that you have the software because you've got to buy the i1 profiler to actually run the thing. When you launch this the first time, it's probably going to offer you a chance to update to the latest version of software. We've just seen that because it uses the same software that we use to build the printer profile. You're just going to see the same thing again. It probably makes sense to go ahead and do the update and then run this guy. Again, like the other, like the printer profiler itself, you want to plug this thing in before you launch the software. Especially, this one's even more wonky than the printer profiler one. This one, you really do confuse the software. It doesn't know. What'll end up happening, if you're unlucky, is you will actually get to the whole end of the process and it won't be able to save your profile. It will get confused. It won't offer you the chance to do it. Things will screw up. So at any rate, plug this thing in first. Then the software that you will have is, again, the exact same software that we use to do the printing profile, the print profile. So in this guy right here, I'm going to hit I to get to my i1 profiler. I'm going to double click on this to launch it. So does everybody have that file now? then let's go through this first, and then we'll do the monitor last, because I really want to make sure you get through this part. Okay, so everybody's got that file. If you could do me a favor and open that file, if you just double click on it, it should launch it into Photoshop. Let me find a copy of mine that I can use. Okay, so if you double click on this, it'll bring it into Camera Raw. And the first thing that we have to do with this is we actually, the way both of these software programs work is they need to do this work on a DNG. We don't have a DNG of this. We've actually got this CR2 file. This is a raw Canon file. However, this will work on any raw file. So if you've got Sony, it'll work on Sony. It'll work on Nikon. It even works on Phase. So just so that you know, we're just going to make a DNG out of this really quickly. To do that, you click on the Save Image button that's in the lower left-hand corner of the screen. Just click on Save Image. A dialog box will open up. And in the dialog box that opens up, if you leave it at its defaults, it should look like my screen right now. If it doesn't, a couple things you need to check. The first is in the destination, in the drop-down menu, you want to save this in the exact same location where the CR2 file is. It just makes it easier to find it. So again, if you just leave this at same location, it's going to write that DNG right next to the CR2 file so we can find it relatively quickly. The rest of it is all basically how the thing gets named, and so all of this, you don't really care about anything else in there. You can simply hit Save. When you do that, you'll see a little wheel spin down here at the bottom indicating that it's processing that file. It is now done. We don't need to open this. We don't need to work with this. We need to hit the button Done that's on the far right-hand side. Just click Done to go back out, and then go to your Finder, and if you look in that folder, you should now see a DNG copy of that file sitting right underneath the CR2 one. Does everybody have that guy? We good on that part? Okay, there's two software programs that'll actually do this. We're going to go through them both really quickly. Hopefully, these are both on your computers right now. For the people who are on laptops, if you don't have this installed, it's sitting on the server. You might be able to download it from the server. You were able to? Okay, so you can download it from the server. You want to do the Color Passport Checker software, and you also want to do the DNG Profile Editor, both of those. The first one we're going to do is the Color Passport Checker software, though. And again, if you can't get it off the server, both of those are also on our Canvas site in week session 4's resources. So here I'm going to again go for the Color Passport Checker. So Color Passport Checker, if you double click on that guy, it will actually open up. With it open up, first thing that comes up is the display calibration is essential for all of this. Which one do you want to use on this? Check on start, whatever. It's just telling you again how important this whole thing is. We haven't done a display calibration on this guy yet, but we will. So you can simply hit OK to this. It'll dismiss that. Again, it's going to offer you to do the latest, greatest update. Don't do the update right now, but before you actually work with this, do it later on. But I don't want to spend the time doing that right now. So again, we're just saying to hit remind me later, not skip this version. And then it says to simply drag that DNG on top of this right here. There's two ways you can do that. You can actually, if you can get to your Finder easily and you can see it, you just drag the image right into this big space. If not, you can go up to the File menu and pick Add Image, and that will then again bring up the typical dialog boxes that'll allow you to navigate to that. But in my case, because I can see both of them, I'm simply going to drag my image on top of it, and it should bring it in. And it's saying that it's loading the image. And my image is now loaded. And if I actually zoom into this guy, you can see I'm zooming into the card. It should have located the card for you. Did that happen for everyone? Now, if it didn't locate the card for you, you can use this tool set that's on the side. You've got a magnifying glass that you can use to zoom in and to zoom out. The little arrow with a check with a plus next to it allows you to actually go in and grab the little corners. The corners are represented by those little green handles. You can actually grab these guys and move them around. This does not seem like it is happy with this, so I am quitting this and going to redo mine. That's a problem. So Versor's up for a restart right now, so I need everybody to hang tight. Oh, I bet you I know what's happening possibly. Yeah, I'm just going to do a quick restart. So there's going to be 3 parts to the video tonight.